we've got great brand awareness. So I really don't need to broadcast. Reach and frequency isn't really what I need right now, because we have we're dealing with a minority audience. So within the community and within our audiences, people know what Grindr is, or they think they know what Grindr is, and most of them have used it at some time or the other. What I need to do is build that affinity, that recommendation, that brand love.
I'm Eric Fulweiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from the leading brands and brains rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today.
Hey everyone, my guest today is Tristan Pineiro. He is the VP of Brand and Marketing and Comms at Grindr. And chances are you've heard of Grindr because they have the luxury of having over 80% unaided brand awareness in the market. How many of us would love to have that? But you probably don't know exactly what they're up to now or the scale of the business and some of the opportunities that they have and that they're facing right now. So it's really interesting to talk to Tristan because he has a wealth of experience coming from a PR and comms background, but he spent time at Netflix, he spent time at Badoo, he spent time at Bumble as the head of marketing and comms, and he's been at Grindr for 6 months. And so we talk a little bit about how he's approached those first 6 months. And I love, really what he's been doing is trying to get to the core, get to the truth of who Grindr actually is as a business and a brand. And I think that's something that, as you'll hear me talk about, we could all benefit from going through that exercise. He talks about his framework of having, quote, 3 brand truths: what people think you are, who you say you are, and who you really are, to figure out what your central narrative needs to be, and then how he's actually applied that at Grindr. He also talks about his approach to having a social-led marketing discipline and how that's led to some of the recent campaigns that have been pretty effective at growing the brand, but also positioning it for what it is right now, not just what people think it is or what it used to be. And then we also talk about the combination of purpose and profit. Grindr has an opportunity as really the only global LGBTQ plus brand to drive positive change in the world. But at the same time, they're now a publicly traded company. So how do you make those two things work together? What does that look like at the practical, tactical level for Tristan and his marketing team? So fascinating episode, so much good stuff in here. I'm going to let you get to it. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Tristan Pineiro of Grindr. Tristan, thank you so much for making the time. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. How are things in Los Angeles today?
Looking forward to it too. It's a bright sunny day, but no change there. Things are looking good, but it's 9 o'clock in the morning and it's a Friday, so excited to see what the day brings.
Amazing. So I am equally excited about all the guests that we have on the show, of course, but I will say, based on our prep conversation and everything that you've told us and that we've seen about what you're doing at Grindr, I think this is going to be a really good one. So let's get into it, because I really feel like 45 minutes is not going to be enough. So before we talk about Grindr and your background and everything that you're doing there, the icebreaker question that we ask every guest is, what is one challenger brand that you're passionate about right now and why?
So the brand that I'm slightly obsessed by and that I watch very closely is a brand that could have very easily have fallen by the wayside. It's quite an old one, but I think what they're doing at the moment is genius, and it's Mattel, the toy producer. I think that the way that they're venturing into entertainment, and the way that they really understand the appeal to the adult market and to the adult collectors with the whole nostalgia, nostalgia, I just find it really interesting. I mean, toys in a tech world could have very easily have been forgotten about. They're big brands like, Barbie, Masters of the Universe, Hot Wheels, and all of that. When kids are potentially sitting looking at screens, could have gone away. And yet I was watching the Oscars recently, and it was practically like a Mattel advertisement. I mean, the whole Ken thing there, Billie Eilish song, the Barbie campaign last year was just, I mean, whoever was in charge of marketing for that deserves a medal, because they were everywhere. You just couldn't avoid it. And the fact that they're staying relevant, they're reinventing themselves, they're finding new audiences. The whole Mattel creation stuff that they have, where the adult collectors are being sold, collector Barbies and Hot Wheels and He-Man and stuff. I just think it's a real masterclass on how to reinvent yourself and keep yourself relevant and get people to reconsider you and to be part of the conversation rather than falling by the wayside, which so many legacy brands are in danger of doing. I admire them, so I always keep an eye on what Mattel are up to.
It's such a good one for a few different reasons, in my opinion. The first being that, oftentimes the answer is like a true challenger brand, right? And there are, of course, so many of those. But actually, what I think is even more challenging, and it's incredibly challenging to disrupt a category, get known, be able to grow as a startup. But what I think what's even harder is being an incumbent that then has to reinvent yourself for so many different reasons. And I think also the kind of trend and huge opportunity of when you own IP, particularly IP that has nostalgic value, being able to bring that back into culture in a relevant way. I spent all those years at VaynerMedia with Gary Vaynerchuk, and that was always his whole vision with Vayner, that I'm not entirely sure why it hasn't properly been executed yet, and I'm sure it will be, but building a marketing machine and then going to buy orphan brands. For him, it was consumer packaged goods, right? So looking at orphan brands within PepsiCo, Unilever, et cetera, that we could then take and then reintroduce and revive within culture. I definitely think that there's something there, but it is so hard to almost kind of get out of your own way, because if you're an incumbent, you almost need to challenge yourself if you want to actually do that. So I would be there, and it'd be super interesting to see if we can try to talk to somebody at Mattel. I'm sure they're getting hit up with a lot of people looking to understand the story, but just like the people side of how the executives there, were willing to commit to doing things like this. Because even Barbie, it's like part of it is kind of taking the piss a little bit. And so they had to be comfortable with kind of, letting people retell their story in an honest way, not the way that maybe they wanted to do it.
And just the excitement that was all around it. And the last people that you would imagine on their own socials using I Am Barbie frames and the partnerships that they had, and just the people that got involved with it. That there's so many executions, from what people were wearing to what people were talking about. The conversation was all about Barbie, and like I say, having that big Ken logo up in the Oscars during a performance, you can't buy that kind of stuff. I mean, there was the tequila stuff in there, which very much felt like, okay, this is a placement. But I don't think people were even thinking, hang on a minute, I'm being sold Barbie throughout the whole Oscars. And much as, they got snubbed for a lot of the categories and they didn't win, it was just so there. I just thought it was incredible. I mean, I'd hate to be responsible for their figures, because they're going to have to try and replicate that year on year, which is a high bar. And I know they've got lots of kind of other films in the making, so we'll see how they go.
Yeah. And I will say, I remember with the whole Barbie campaign, there was a lot of conversation in our AMP CMO WhatsApp group about, like, yeah, it's smart, but if you give me $150 million, marketing budget, like, I could do that as well. But I do think, I mean, there's so many examples of, I always think about, well, yeah, you can buy your way to the top. You can just buy market saturation and awareness. But clearly what they did is they had that financial advantage to be able to do it, but they also brought a lot of creativity to it in the way that they executed it. So yeah, I do think that that's a great case study. And I'm sure there are many more, leveraging the IP that they have. I'm sure there's a whole 10-year runway and roadmap of what else they're going to do. So definitely watch this space. So let's talk about you and Grindr. So before we get into it, for people, and I think you gave us a stat that you have over 80% unaided awareness. So the chances are most people listening to this have heard of Grindr, but for those who haven't, or maybe those that don't know where the brand and business is today, can you give us the quick overview?
I can. So Grindr turns 15 this year. So we were one of the first apps that took advantage of the iPhone launch back in 2009 to create a location-based service whereby gay, bi, queer, trans people could connect to each other. So it was using immediacy, location, so that the community could connect. mainly for hookups. That was the initial use case. But over the 15 years, those use cases have evolved, and the community has found lots of different uses for it to connect. Fast forward to now, we've been publicly listed for a year, and there's a big focus on really recognizing the power of Grindr. So something that was created 15 years ago as a hookup app has become the world's largest place for the community to connect, and it still has mainly hookup functionality. So we really are at the stage now where we're looking at how else people are using us, be it for travel, be it for friendship, be it for dating, be it for finding community, be it for advice, and really starting to build the app around those use cases to actually facilitate a lot of those. It's kind of like a back to front business model in that, normally you build it and the audience will come. Whereas we have the audience, we're looking at what we're doing, and we're refining that, which from a tech point of view is quite interesting, really, because it means that we have the power of this captive audience, and engagement is huge. And now we're really looking at, okay, what can we do that's going to make your life easier, and that changes, from city to rural, from country to country. But we're in 190 countries, and you know that if you want to connect with gay people wherever you are in the world, then Grindr is the way to do that.
And I know one of the things that you said in our prep call that really stuck in my mind is that Grindr is really the only global LGBTQ plus brand. And I hadn't thought about it that way before, but it's very true.
Yeah, I mean, there's media map brands like Pink News, but we really are in 190 countries, and we are universally known. Our perception varies, there's and that's what I really need to start putting on steroids, improving our brand reputation, because we haven't really been telling the true story of the success of Grindr, both from a product point of view, but also from the success that the users find on Grindr day to day, from finding connection to ending loneliness, to all kinds of stuff that goes on there that we don't really talk about. And we also have a very strong Grindr for Equality arm within the company, where we do connect with global organizations to help the cause. Our vision is that the more successful we are as a company, the better impact we can have for the community globally. So I think the combination of business and mission is absolutely red-dyed through the company, and something that's very close to everyone that works here.
Yeah, and I definitely want to come back to that. I know we're going to talk about that kind of balance between the purpose and the profit and the commercial realities of the business. So we're going to go into kind of what you're up to now, the future, the roadmap that you're building. But actually, before we do, I want to look a little bit backwards. So you've been in the role for a little over 6 months now, and I think it's always interesting to kind of get perspective and advice from new CMOs, new senior marketers in their role. So I've got a couple more specific questions, but I guess I just want to start with, how have you approached things in the first 6 months?
So very much looking at where we are and really understanding who our audience is and our stakeholders are has been one big piece that I've really wanted to dig into. And the overarching piece is really looking at the brand. So this is currently mainly a brand job, in that, like I say, awareness is incredible, but is it the right kind of awareness? And something that I learned from Angie Moxham, who I used to work for I should call her Angie Three Monkeys Moxham, she changed her name, who I used to work for way back at the beginning of my career, is always look at the three brand truths. And the three brand truths are who you really are, what the company really is, who people say you are, and who you say you are. And the closer aligned those things are, then the stronger your brand will be. It's the same for people as well. Apparently, it's based on Buddhist philosophy, but I mean, it might be Kung Fu Panda. I'm not sure, but something like that. So I started to look at those three truths of Grindr, and the truth of who we really are is a very successful business with a very engaged user base who really find a lot of success. So, so many relationships, marriages, friendships have started through a Grindr connection. And that isn't really something that we shout about that much. Who we say we are has kind of changed over 15 years in that, we've tried to premiumize, we've tried to shy away from the hookup and sex aspect of it all, which I really don't think we should do. Sex is a part of the human experience, and as long as it's between consenting adults, then I really want us to help change the narrative around that. There's still a lot of shame around that. There's a lot of stigma, both from inside the community and outside the community. And who people think we are, again, because our narrative has been kind of largely unmanaged for quite a while, is somewhere not particularly safe, somewhere where not great things can happen to you, somewhere that's just a bit seedy and not somewhere that you'd be proud to talk about. And again, that's something that I really want to change. And it comes from no end of places, from cultural reasons, societal reasons, religious reasons, a lot of shame that comes from growing up gay still. I mean, it's improving, but there's still a lot of work to do, and it varies from country to country as well. So really focusing on the core of what we really are and shouting about that, so that will then influence how people talk about us and how we talk about ourselves, which should be, I mean, it's a cliche to say out and proud because we're an LGBT brand, but that is somewhere where I think Grindr deserves to be.
And I love that, and I jotted it down from our prep call when you mentioned it, but that approach to the three brand truths, because I think that is a very actionable thing that any marketer can do and really should do on a regular basis. Even for us at Rival, I think we should sit down and run through those questions. What do people think we are? Who do we say we are, and who we really are? And the whole reason that this podcast is called Scratch is because I think that growth comes from being able to bring that fresh day one current thinking to where you are right now and not being beholden to how you decided you thought things were in the past. So that scratch thinking, that scratch planning, as we call it for your brand, but also your marketing strategy, really everything, I think should be part of some type of regular-ish ritual that marketers go through. So if we maybe get really tactical with that. So exploring the three brand truths. I know you come from more of a comms PR background, so finding the narrative, how you tell that narrative within modern culture. How did you actually do that? Like, did you just do that internally? Did you hire an agency? What was the process for getting to those answers?
Yeah, so it's a combination of internal and agency. And as you mentioned, I come from comms and PR. And so I have the discipline of always taking it back to being authentic and the truth, because it sounds like a daft thing to say, but your brand has to be true, or people are going to see straight through it now more than ever. And yet I see so many campaigns, and I've been in meetings where it's like, well, we should say we are this, or we should position ourselves as this, which is all very well, but if it isn't rooted in the actual truth of what you do and how you operate, then that's just not going to hold together. Saying we are into all of these things when the truth of the company is that you're absolutely not is never going to work. And I think coming from PR and comms, I always take it back to how am I going to sell this on the phone to a journalist? Because they're going to want to know, why do I care? Is it interesting? And ultimately, where's the proof of this? And so taking that discipline and using it in marketing so that the narrative that we're telling is anchored in truth just makes it so much simpler, because you can just keep asking the question, is it true and is it interesting? And that is how I've built the whole content first strategy, and that the content needs to be true to our audience, interesting to our audience, and anchored in what the truth of that product is, so that you will build trust and you will build that emotional engagement as well. So that what we're talking about is going to resonate with people in a way that we're going to get into their hearts rather than as well as their heads.
I really like and can relate to that true and interesting, and thinking about it almost from a PR standpoint. I remember, or just made me remember, in the time that I was at Vayner, one of the iterations that we had of how we would actually do creative briefs. I forget exactly what it was, but it was basically like you have to write the tweet of what the announcement is for the campaign before you actually go into what you want to do. So it's kind of forcing you to think about, in a very concise way, what's exciting about this? Why would anyone care? And one of the things that I think about, and I think is very true for brand and marketing and also for life, is just there are a few things that really matter, that really stand out. It can maybe be a little bit depressing to think about, but actually a lot of the time and effort that we put in is just kind of bridging the gap between those few and far between headlines of what's actually going to make a difference and actually get noticed. But I think you can create more of those opportunities and make sure that you get more out of them when they happen if you're reverse engineering from, why would somebody actually care about this? Question for you though.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with the prompt of, is it true? Is it interesting? We had one of our CMO dinners last night here in London. We just get together kind of 10 or 12 CMOs from different categories, different businesses, and have an open conversation about marketing challenges, ideas, et cetera. And one of the things that came up was really around differentiation, right? And one of the things that I think about in my previous CMO role and that we try to do here at Rival is, if we took our logo off of a piece of content, an ad, an event that we did, could it be one of our competitors? So for example, last night, 10, 12 CMOs, when everybody walked in, they had a roll of toilet paper on the table. Who gives a crap toilet paper? Which is a challenger brand that we really like. We had the CMO on the podcast recently. And that to me was like, well, McKinsey would not do this. McCann, the agency, would not do this. They would not put a roll of toilet paper on the table. That is a Rival thing. So I guess my question is, true, interesting, how important or how do you factor differentiation into that?
So differentiation is absolutely tied into the authenticity of it all. So really going back to why Grindr exists and having that open and honest conversation in public, through our platforms, and also aligning internally on what that is. And I think there's still a lot of stigma around sex, and specifically gay sex, and we're clickbaity, and people like to turn their nose up at us because there's still this uncomfortable conversation around what we are, who we are, what we stand for. So I think the differentiation comes from acknowledging that and using that as our power, and actually saying, yes, we are a hookup app. Yes, people are having sex here. And they're doing a whole load of other great stuff as well. And we're happy about that and we celebrate it. But also saying, yes, sometimes not great things happen, and we do everything that we possibly can to avoid that. And the podcast that we've just launched is very much about that open and honest conversation, being self-reflective, self-aware, warts and all, and really being an open book about the good, the bad, the ugly, the brilliant that happens on Grindr. Really being proud of that.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a quick break because we've actually heard from many of you that you want to get a better understanding of what it is that we actually do as a business. You know us through this podcast, all the content that we put out, the events that we put on, the community that we have, the media company side of what we're up to here at Rival. But actually the core business, just to kind of fill you all in, is we're a full service marketing agency at this point. Obviously, we specialize in challenger brands. And what that means is that we work with either startups to help them scale and get to the next level, or we work with a lot of incumbents like Reebok, Unilever, JP Morgan to help them innovate or launch something new within the marketing function. We typically work across four main areas of the marketing department: brand and product positioning, creative ideation and production, paid media planning and buying, and customer data and marketing technology. We're also building some tech of our own, as you would have seen with Curo and also Enodo. So That's it. Just wanted to fill you all in since you've asked for it. And if you're interested in hearing more about what we're up to, please get in touch. But with that, I'll let you get back to the show. How much of the work in these first 6 months of figuring out what that narrative is, the 3 brand truths, was the work itself, identifying what you wanted that story to be, versus getting the buy-in and alignment from other people internally to decide on what you thought it should be?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky. So George Allison, who I report into, is really bought into having this strong narrative, content first strategy for us. He's very aware that we have a great, strong brand in terms of recognition. It's the affinity, the recommendation, the love that need fixing. And so I've been working with the Romans in New York, again, a comms agency, but using them to really build a strong brand narrative with the reasons to believe, with the key proof points, with the authentic storytelling based on who we really are. And we've been interviewing all kinds of people internally. We've done a big audience segmentation and mapping piece of work with 2CV to really understand who our audiences are, how they use us, what they think about us, how we can harness that and use that power and talk to them, and then aligning internally on the what Grindr is and what the potential of Grindr is. And better understanding all these use cases that have sprung up without us necessarily encouraging them. So travel, for example, is something that we are really starting to build for and talk for. So I'm currently in the process of building an online travel show, which to the outsider might seem like a weird thing, but a real use case is that the LGBT community will use Grindr when they're traveling either to another city or on holiday somewhere to meet different people, but also to find out information about, where are the safe places to go? Where are the bars? Where are the clubs? Where's the beach? Where should I go to? Where should I avoid? And that's absolutely not something that we were built for. It's just that, who would have thought this hookup app has become the global place where the community is. And if we live in big cities, it's quite easy to forget how few of us there are. We're depending who you listen to, we're between 5 and 2% of the global population. So we don't necessarily find each other at work, at college, growing up, in the supermarket. So having this kind of like magic looking glass whereby location based, we can discover other people who, are like-minded, who share our lives, who share our concerns, who share our passions, can be a lifeline and can provide information, access, companionship, friendship, relationships that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And so again, really looking at how the community has started to use Grindr and really building around that and capitalizing it and aligning on the power of that and how that is then pulled through all of our messaging and all of our materials is an ongoing piece of work. It's a big piece of work. I've been here 6 months. We've made strides towards it, but there's still a lot of work to do. And it's going to be ongoing as well, because it's going to evolve, it's going to change. And, constantly listening, constantly observing, constantly evolving is going to be a big part of this, because the one thing that I've learned here is that you can't take anything for granted, and that you can't assume that the way that you think people are using Grindr is a certain way, because everyone gets something different from it. But at the core is connection and community.
Yeah. And I think figuring out that core is so key, but then also figuring out, and by design, having a framework or an approach where it updates as the world around it does, or the business within it does as well. So like our framework for developing brand positioning, we call it building a brand operating system, exactly because of that. And I think what you're talking about, just throw it out there. One of the best pieces of advice that I've heard about, finding product market fit, because that's really where all growth comes from at the end of the day. Like, are you able to deliver value in a differentiated, better, faster, cheaper way compared to the competitive offering within the market? And in order to figure out how to do that, you need to understand what people are getting or could be getting out of your product. And so the advice was just follow what your most engaged users are already doing. And it was a product recommendation, like that's how you build your product roadmap. But I think the same thing, having worked in a product business before starting Rival, as like a little gap between my agency days and now my Rival days, was super interesting, because I think the best products, the best brands are built in the same ways as the best products. And so what I'm getting out of what you just talked about is follow the user base, follow the most engaged user base. If they're starting to use it for travel, there's an opportunity not just for the product functionality around it, but to build a brand around that use case as well. They really go hand in hand. The other thing I want to draw out that you said kind of at the beginning of that last answer that I think is so key, I asked about buy-in, and I think every marketer out there can relate to how do I get buy-in for what I want to do. But what you said is your boss was already aligned with how you thought about and wanted to go do things. And sure, if you're in a job, this isn't going to help you right now, but absolutely think about this as you're interviewing for your next job, getting the alignment with your boss, particularly if you're a CMO reporting into someone who's non-marketing, making sure that that alignment is there about how you view the world, what your marketing playbook is, because if not, there's going to be constant friction from the very beginning. So you talked about kind of part of that alignment being this social-led marketing discipline. So I think that's the next chapter that I want to go into. So what does a social-led marketing discipline, what does that mean for you at kind of the principle level? And then what does it look like at the practical level within the function that you're building out at Grindr?
Yeah, so we've got great brand awareness. So I really don't need to broadcast. Reach and frequency isn't really what I need right now, because we have, we're dealing with a minority audience. So within the community and within our audiences, people know what Grindr is, or they think they know what Grindr is, and most of them have used it at some time or the other. What I need to do is build that affinity, that recommendation, that brand love. No one's running down the street going, "Yes, I use Grindr and it's brilliant," and that's what I want to change, because they are, and it is. They're just not talking about it. So it really feels that I can really kind of narrow in on these audiences by creating content that's going to engage them and that's going to start to shift their perception and their thinking around Grindr. So it's not just I need this, I'm going to get on Grindr. It might not be exactly, I might not be engaging with it. It's just very functional. It gets me what I want, which is great and means that we've grown. But it can also put you in a dangerous place, because someone can come along and connect with people and connect with our audiences in a way that is better and have a great product, and that can all go away. So I want to keep our audiences engaged and thinking about Grindr in a way that shows that we get them, that we understand them, that we know what your life is like, that we know what you're after, that we know the ups and downs, and being very open about that. And so having the social content at the heart of that, which can really amplify all the fun that you can have by using Grindr, that can amplify the fact that we understand that it's sometimes not easy, and either give advice or have a different way of looking at that, or just hosting that conversation that other people aren't necessarily hosting. Having that content that we can target them with via social, we have the huge benefit of being able to get this content to people within the app as well. So we're working on building a content hub, but at the moment, through the messaging service, we can send links to social, to the blog, to the YouTube. And then that becomes the PR story, because it's interesting, because it's unusual, because it's got a great spokesperson in there. And for the consumer story, again, it gets Grindr talked about in a different way that isn't always this necessary evil. I use it, but I don't necessarily want to. I use it, I delete it, I feel bad about myself for reasons that are kind of like, to a certain extent, outside of our control, because it is about society and about, you know, a lot of the pressures and a lot of the behaviors that are in there. Having that central content that then people can talk about on media becomes kind of like this virtuous circle of the content does well, they talk about it on media because people have seen it in media, they go back to the content, they're having interesting constructive discussions in the comments that then kind of help inform us as to what people are thinking about, what their concerns are, that we again can take all of that goodness, create more content, have extra information in the blog that again helps with our SEO, but also can be linked through into other articles. And we can then, you know, use for our growth marketing, for digital marketing. We can boost it all. We can reach more people. And at the moment, we're just doing it in the US, and the focus always has very much been the US. But we are starting to look at international markets as well, because the thing about dating and homosexuality and sex is that it absolutely is not the same all over the world. I mean, it's not the same all over the US. It's a huge country, and you know, attitudes vary from state to state. But when we start to think about countries like India or Brazil or Germany, then I can't just replicate that social content. I really need to be very much understanding culturally, societally, what the conversation around Grindr is, what the conversation around the community is, and starting to create content that, again, I think is going to engage our audiences a lot more from an emotional point of view, from a Grindr gets me point of view. And that is going to, again, in turn, get people coming back to Grindr, using us more, recommending us more, being proud of the fact that they're on there, and making us a successful business. And the more successful we are as a gay business, then the more impact and the more influence we will have in being able to effect positive change through the work that we do. And that is the part that really excites me, because yes, we provide a great service, we end loneliness, we encourage connection, but through our success, you know, at the moment, if we go to a legislator and say, you know, we don't necessarily agree with what you're proposing, we're going to be slapped away. You're just a hookup app. What do you know about anything? But the bigger we become, the more we can take that place on the global stage, which we absolutely deserve, the more impact and influence we can begin to have.
So I think that's a great place to go as kind of the final segment to wrap things up. So obviously every business is talking about brand purpose. You've talked a little bit about what the mission is at Grindr. What does that actually look like? Like, how do you take that mission, what else, but also the commercial realities of what you need to deliver, and turn that into kind of the day-to-day operations?
It's a balance that I think, you know, we've been on different sides of within the business. We recognize that we are up there, and we should be up there on the global stage, and we should be recognized as such. You know, we're currently pretty much on a par with Bumble, which who would have thought? You know, this little gay hookup app. We are a serious business, and as such, we should be financially focused, and we should be focused on the results. And since George has been in place and we have been public, that has very much been a focus, and that is very much so that the bigger we are, the more impact we will have. And that really understanding that we are a global company is something that we're currently in the stages of working through. Our corporate positioning is incredibly important because we are an advertising platform. And there will be advertisers that will be very nervous about going on Grindr because of the content that's on there. So again, being able to get that message across that we are a serious business, that we do have a global captive audience, and it's a very desirable audience as well. I mean, we are the tastemakers. We are the audience that breaks new fashions and tech and so on. And so that's something that I really want us to start to a message that I want us to start to land a lot more, that that Grindr is a serious business with a serious mission, and that the success of the mission is very much aligned to the success of the company. Because, like I say, the more recognized we are, the bigger we are, the more people are going to sit up and pay attention to this gay business. And by being a loud, proud gay business, we can affect so much positive change. There's a lot of the stuff that we do with G4E as well, Grindr for Equality, that I really want to start getting out there a lot more. It's something that happens in the background, and there are reasons why we can't necessarily talk too much about it, because for a lot of people in a lot of countries, we are a lifeline, but we're kind of like a well-kept secret. And so I don't want to break that. I don't want to go out in a country and go, yes, Grindr, come here for all your gay needs, because that's going to put undue attention on us. And in a lot of countries, we're already getting that undue attention, and we are getting police using Grindr to entrap people. And we work with a lot of local organizations and NGOs to provide funding, to provide a platform, to provide anything that we can to help them. But there's that delicate balance between, doing that and shouting too much about it. But I think it's a part that people don't know too much about Grindr, in that we do already do a lot of good. We can absolutely do a lot more. And that's going to be, again, integral to our messaging going forward.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm getting, and kind of the red thread and key takeaway for me from this conversation and everything that we've touched on, is go back to the truth. If you're starting an exercise about brand, if you're starting an exercise about purpose, if you're starting an exercise about how marketing and product work together, whatever it actually is, if you default to going back to the truth of who you are as a business, that is the first step for moving anything forward. And that might mean, and probably should mean, that you're not for everybody. But they say strategy is the art of the sacrifice. And I think that the best brands and the best businesses are very clear and consistent with who they're for and who they're not. And that's a big part of what drives their growth.
Absolutely. We're a polarizing brand. We're a polarizing brand, and that's never going to end. And in fact, it's something that I want to lean into, because we do have a point of view. We do cater to an underrepresented, under attack, marginalized community. And trying to blend that out and trying to make that palatable to all audiences is going to mean that we lose our point of difference, and we lose our edginess, and we lose the pride. And to your point, that it's not the truth of who we are.
Yep. Love it. Well, I think that's a great place to end. So I know we have to run in a minute, but let's do a quick lightning round. So like one sentence, top of mind answers, if you're up for it. All right, here we go. What's the best piece of career advice you've ever received?
Several. Listen has always been something that I aim to do. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and there's a reason for that. And that is something that I truly believe in. The other one is simplicity is key. I think we can all in this industry overcomplicate, overthink, overanalyze. My key question that I ask myself with any campaign or any execution is, could I explain this in 1 sentence to my mum? And would she know what I was talking about? And if not, then it's probably too complicated.
What is your marketing pet peeve, either currently or all time?
I mean, I've probably just done it, but marketing speak annoys me. And I'm sure, I'll listen back to this and I hang on a minute, you've just done a whole podcast of it. But just say the thing. I've been interviewing a lot of people recently, and I just keep saying, yes, but what do you do? Yes, but what does that mean? Yes, but and I think, within marketing, we've got so many terms that mean slightly different things to different people, and actually understanding each other and what we're talking about. I think we talk at cross purposes so often when we talk about growth and performance and stuff, that means something different in just about every organization that you are. And I think having a very definite glossary of exactly what this means would be useful. But then again, there'd probably be about 20 of them, and you wouldn't know which one you were reading. So the whole marketing talk that goes with stuff, I'm always saying, yes, but what does that mean?
Final question. What is one thing people should do differently after listening to this episode?
Stick to the truth. If you're working for a brand or a company that really does a thing that is useful and necessary and interesting and additive, or any of those things, just say it, celebrate it. Don't try to be something you're not. Just find that truth. Because if your company's been set up, that passion has been there at some stage for the thing. And I think it's so easy for us to lose sight of that and try to overthink it, overanalyze it. Just celebrate what you are and find ways of telling that story that are interesting, that are going to make people smile, act, think, do that. That's what I'd say.
Love it. Tristan, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to let you get on with your day in Los Angeles. If people want to connect with you, find out more about what you're up to at Grindr, where should we point them?
All the Grindr channels are easy to find. They're Grindr wherever you are. And I'm easy to find as well. I have one of those unusual names, which is great if you're trying to find me. Not so great if you're in my inbox and I have about 1 million sales emails a day. But yeah.
All right. Well, no sales outreach, but we'll link to you in the show notes.
I mean, but why not? Why not? I've found some of my best partners through that.
Thanks so much, Tristan.
It's been a pleasure, Eric. Thank you.
Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a marketing innovation consultancy that helps businesses develop strategies and capabilities to grow faster. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with me, email me at eric@wearerival.com or find me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and please do leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.